Welcome to the Red Hot Reds podcast presented by Ohio Sports Talk. This is a podcast for Reds fans by Reds fans. And today we're going to talk about the starting rotation and starting pitching, which was a strength in 2024. Can it be a strength in 2025? We're going to find out. Ricky, let's start the show.
Let's go.
This is the Red Hot Reds podcast. Here are your hosts, Ricky Logan and Roger Straz.
Ricky, hey man, episode 4, we made it. We're getting through the lineup. We're getting through the roster. Now we're on starting pitching. So we're very thankful that you guys are tuning in. Thanks again to Doug and Jordan for lending us this platform, getting us to be able to put out our stuff on Ohio Sports Talk. Please subscribe to Ohio Sports Talk on YouTube, on X, on Instagram, on Facebook. We got all that stuff out there. Ricky's been doing a great job putting out clips, getting the countdown for opening day, which is, oh gosh, it's almost less than 2 weeks away, right? We're getting there. We're getting there, right? And also if you listen to podcasts, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can find us. Today it is starting pitching, Ricky. So the Scoreboard Stumper is going to be about starters, okay? Since 2014, there have been 7. There's a lot. 7 starting pitching starters that have pitched at least 180 innings or more in a season. Can you name them?
Oh boy. Let's see. Is this talking Reds pitchers, right?
Yes, Reds guy. Yeah, Red starters.
Let's see. See if I can go chronologically here. We'll go. I think most recently will be Luis Castillo.
Correct. He did it twice, 2021 and 2019.
Let's see. Man, you know how to stump the Swami here.
All right. So some hints. There's a guy that he also did it in 2021. Kind of a guy that had a really good 1 year and left the Reds. I want to say they faced him in spring training recently. I forget what team he's with now. Yeah. And then there's a couple guys that it would be difficult. One did it in 2016, just one season. Another in 2015. I believe this guy ended up pitching for the Giants later on in his career.
Let's see. Sonny Gray?
Oh, no, Sonny never actually hit 180 for the Reds. No.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Let's see. Let's go. Tyler Mahle?
Yes. Tyler Mahle,
Okay.
2021, alongside Luis Castillo. He hit 180. He had like 100. He might have had 180, I think, exactly in 2021. Can you believe that?
Let's see. Anthony Disclafani?
Yes. Disclafani did it in 2015. Now, here's also a hint. In 2014, there was 3 guys, and I wanted to include them because it was kind of mind-blowing, the stats, and we'll get into the stats if you can get them. So there's 3 guys that did it in 2014. One, definitely a Reds legend. Another guy also, I think, made an all-star appearance in 2014 for the Reds as a starter.
2014, man. Let's see. Johnny Cueto.
Yes.
Matt Latos.
No, not Latos.
Let's see. 2014. Let's go back. Bronson Arroyo?
Oh, he did it actually in 2013, the year prior. 2014, I think he was either done with the Reds or it moved on, retired.
Homer Bailey?
Not Bailey, no. No. So we got Malley, we got Castillo, we got Disco Fine, we got Cueto. Okay. The one that I think would be hardest to get happened in 2016. Dan Straley.
Dan Straley.
He had 180 something in 2016, which 2016 was not, I don't think, a great year for the Reds. I think it was kind of in that lull period after the playoff years. But there's two more that made it. Any idea? Or mercy?
I think I'm tapping out.
So in 2014, the other two guys, there was Cueto, Mike Leake, and Alfredo Simon. Which, yeah, it was
funny. The two, Dan Straley and Alfredo Simon, we got Eugenio Suarez for Alfredo Simon. And I feel like Dan Straley led to Luis Castillo.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then, obviously Luis Castillo led to Marte and Arroyo. And wow.
That's kind of the cycle of the Reds. They get some guys that overproduce, maybe get on the higher end of their averages, and they could probably sell them for prospects. But the reason why I included the 2014 guys is, get this, and I don't think across baseball we'll see this again. In 2014, Alfredo Simon pitched 196 innings. Mike Leake pitched 214. And Johnny Cueto pitched 243. All three of those guys went over 180, and nearly all three of them went over 200. In 2025, I don't think we're going to see that again. And to me, it seems like Johnny Cueto's 243 innings is that's like 200 Greene seasons sometimes, just in one season. So it's kind of mind blowing to see that. And I know 2014 is a long time. I mean, it's 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, 11 seasons ago. Maybe you'll see a guy that does that again. But I don't think you're going to see three guys get nearly 200. Modern baseball, guys are throwing too hard. They're on pitch counts. They're monitored, because a lot of those guys, if they go too long, might put too much stress on the ligaments and get injured and all sorts of things. And the money nowadays is too big to risk having a guy go 240 innings. You know what I mean? Maybe there'd be one guy. There'd probably be some guy, future Hall of Famer, some Skeens type that'll go 240 and be fine. But I don't see any Reds doing that anytime soon. Do you?
Yeah, it'd be tough. I think the only guy that we have that could potentially get close would be Brady Singer, but I don't think it's likely.
Yeah, we'll talk about him more lately. And like I was saying, Johnny Cueto's 243 innings is like 200 Greene seasons. But if we can get 180 out of Hunter, transition. I think Hunter he got Cy Young votes last year. If he can get 100 innings this year, we're talking about maybe top 3, top 2 Cy Young in the NL. And I don't think that's too out there in terms of predictions. I feel like he's coming into his own. He's going into his age 25 season. So he's still, I feel, on the upswing, because we feel that baseball kind of notoriously has that age 27 be the prime, the peak of a lot of guys' athleticism and knowledge of the game. So for Greene to have him do 100 innings this year, I think that'll be a good indication that he's healthy. He's out there almost every 5 days. He's dealing and getting that fastball across with some great velocity behind it. What are your thoughts on Hunter Greene in 2025?
I'm just glad that he was the obvious answer for the opening day starter, and we didn't have another Frankie Montas situation.
Yeah.
I mean, Green, if he can put it all together and build off of last year, he could easily be top 2 and maybe not even be second place. I mean, well, I think he was top 8 in Cy Young voting this past season, and he had his first winning season last year. He cut his ERA in half. He went from I think a 4.6 ERA to a 2.75 ERA, and he was a 6.3 WAR. I mean, he went from a 0.9 to a 6.3. That's great. And if we can get him to build off of last year, he's easily the ace of the staff, and he's top 5 starter in the National League easily.
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned that he was top 8. Yeah, he did finish 8 in the NL Cy Young race, and I think he was probably destined to that top 5 voting rank or better before his late August, September kind of trailed off. And I think with the Reds not being in contention, they kind of shelved him. They didn't put him on the IL, but they kind of they took it easy. He wasn't going out there as much toward the later of the season, and there's an argument that obviously if he got injured, then it would be really bad because then he sets up his 2025 pretty poorly. So, but it would have been nice if he could have finished off 2024 really strong, get a potential Cy Young for the Reds, which, except for 2020, that shortened season, they have no other Cy Young winners. But there's still time for, I think, Hunter Greene to get that accomplishment for the Reds. And I think this year could be a really good opportunity for him to build on that great 2024 season. Hopefully, get even more innings, because I think he only finished with 150 innings last year. So that's why I really set the 180 mark as kind of the standard that we want him to try to go to this year. If he can get above that 180, I think the Reds are having a good year. He obviously will be having a good year, and he'll be in that top 5 easily.
Yeah, I mean, he gets another year with Derek Johnson. He gets a new manager in Terry Francona, and I believe Francona had at least one Cy Young winner in Cleveland, right? When did Shane Bieber, did he win a Cy Young?
Yeah.
So if he could get to 10 wins and keep his ERA to around 3, I think he's easily a Cy Young finalist.
Yeah, for sure. Fangraphs isn't really high on the Hunter Greene train as much as we are. They have him going 8-7 and only getting about 154 innings in this year with a 3.62 ERA. So some regression, and that can be understandable. He's coming off it, like you said, his ERA last year, 2.75. That's fantastic. That's a great ERA to have, especially in modern baseball, where guys are not going as long into games. You know what I mean? So they're not able to offset their ERA if they give up 2 or 3 runs in an inning. You know what I mean? That bloats up their ERA even bigger because they're not going as long into games. You know what I mean? So for him to go 154 innings, I really hope he passes that Fangraphs prediction. I don't know. Obviously, you play the games. Predictions are predictions. They're not necessarily what exactly is going to happen, but you like to think that he's going to build off of that 2024 success. And you know what? I don't know. They keep doing this to him. You mentioned the David Bell, Frankie Montas decision for the opening day. And that was, I think, a slight to Hunter Greene's ego, being the guy that was the top prospect, came through the ranks, ended up being, this fireball right-hander that made it to the big leagues and now got the big contract extension. He kind of got slighted last year. Again, if you remember the team awards at the end of 2024, they gave the pitcher of the year to Nick Martinez instead of Hunter Greene, who, like you said, if we go by WAR numbers, he was the best player on the team. Ellie had a 5.3 WAR. He wasn't he wasn't anywhere touching Hunter Greene's, at least when he was on the field. I get it. Ellie played 158 games, or 160 games. So like you want obviously like your award winners to be guys that were there every single day or as much as they could be, right? And I'd like to think that Hunter is going to take that slight again and hopefully take it into this year. Not necessarily, 2.75 would be great. If he does that, great. I don't expect that. Somewhere around 3, 3.1 ERA, awesome. That would be, I think, serve this team so well, especially if this team has a bounce back offensively that they should after having that kind of sophomore slump last year with a bunch of guys and a lot of guys that missed time to injury, like CES and McLean. Like, the offense should be even better this year than last year, which will hopefully give Hunter more, run support and be able to give him that 10 wins, like you said, or more. But I can't see him being as dominant, but hopefully he doesn't have to be. Do you think he'll carry over the success into 2025?
I would love it. I think like you said, him feeling slighted. I think that'll really get his fire going. He's played really well this spring, and he's showing that he's for sure the team's ace. And I think Francona really sees that in him too. Transitioning, the Reds just announced their top 4 starters. They've announced they have Hunter Greene starting opening day, Lodolo as the second starter, Martinez as the third starter, and Brady Singer as the fourth. What are your thoughts on the top 4 of the rotation?
I like it, but is this? I don't remember this being like a normal thing. Do you remember doing the Reds ever doing this before, where they kind of just go, "Here's our 4 guys or 5 guys." I feel like this may be a little bit out of normal type of practice. But either way, it kind of shows kind of along the lines of how like Francona was like, Ellie's our shortstop, McLean's our second baseman, like putting faith into these guys before we even get to March 27th. I think hopefully will go a long way, especially with like Greene being named the starter so early into spring training. They didn't wait until like, writers or start speculating and putting out all these articles about who's going to be starting against the Giants. Who is it going to be? Montas? Is it going to be Martinez? Or you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Like last year, that kind of happened, and then they finally got the starter name. Like I feel like having these 4 guys put out there at least gives this club confidence that these are guys we're going with. Right away. Hunter leading the pack. Lodolo hopefully will be building on a little bit more success from 2024, even though he kind of had some rocky starts last year. Martinez, being the Mr. Dependable, and Brady Singer being the guy to eat up innings that we kind of really didn't have toward the last, the end of last season. It was kind of, a war of attrition to get through the year where they're just trying to get guys out there to start, and they ended up having openers more times than not. And we talked about this in a previous episode that, hopefully, and we'll touch on this, maybe a little bit later, but like the idea is that, having starters is that these guys are to go into the game, take the ball and make it easier on the bullpen so they don't have to come out of there in the 5th inning, 4th inning. They're coming out in the 8th or 9th or 7th, 8th or 9th, and they're having just, easy day where it's just, 2 or 3 guys that are coming out the pen to set up Diaz for the closing role and call it a night. But, like we were talking about earlier, with not a lot of guys are going 180 innings anymore. So it ends up being difficult to have, a situation where the bullpen is not heavily used, used like 60 to 70 games a season. If I remember right, I think in 2023, Ian Jabot pitched like 70 games. And then for 2024, we didn't see him at all. So you darned if you do. If you really depend on your bullpen, you're going to end up wearing them out. If you don't have your starters go late, and you're like it's whole this balance. So I think Brady Singer hopefully is that answer to, can we eat up these innings so when we get into the late season, August, September time period, that we can have our bullpen be fresh and not feel like they're overtaxed or have to be openers and long starters or long relievers to eat up innings. So that's my take on these four guys. I love to see these four guys healthy and ready to go come when it's the most important time of the season, where they're in contention and they're going up against, like the Brewers or the Cardinals, and games you have to win. Those hopefully are these four guys. What is your take on these four guys right now?
Yeah, Lodolo has, I think, the highest ceiling of the other three, not being Hunter Greene. He's that lefty we have, other than potentially Andrew Abbott. He's got a great fastball. His breaking ball is his out pitch. He had a down year. His rookie season was really his best season so far. He won 9 games last year. I didn't know that until I looked up my notes. He's got the highest ceiling, but he's also got, he's the biggest risk, in my opinion, of the other three. And maybe a bit of a hot take. I think if things don't go well, I think he might be shopped, or move to the bullpen. Just the guys we have coming up, and we're going to talk about them later. I think he only has 2 more years of team control after this year. I think he has options, but I mean, if things don't go well, and I really hope that they do go well, I just think that he's that guy that you could move and get something reasonably back for him. Martinez, he is another guy. If things go well for the up and coming guys, that he is reliable out of the bullpen. He was really good as a starter last year. He had a 4 WAR. He was great. And a fun fact about Martinez is he was the only Red starter to throw a complete game, and I think it was his last start of the year against the Cubs. And he's Mr. Dependable. He's also a guy that can sneakily eat innings, just maybe not as reliable as Brady Singer, but Martinez is a solid number 3 guy. And the only thing I worry about is the contract with him. Is things go well this year, it's like, what are we going to do next year? Because he's already making $21 million, and what are we going to do next year? But that's one of those things you get to when you come to it. And Brady Singer, he's just the innings eater guy. I think he threw, I think it was 100. I guess you'll find my notes.
I think he was close to 180 last year.
Yeah, he would easily have been the Reds innings leader last year. And another thing I noticed too is, like, in hitting, there's OPS plus, where 100's baseline, and anything over 100 is better than league average, and anything below 100 is worse than league average. And with pitching, there's ERA plus. And Singer last year had a 114 ERA plus, which puts him at 14% above league average. And for context, Jonathan India was a 105 OPS plus. So we actually got more out of the trade, in my opinion. But you can't replace India's leadership. But with Singer, you're getting that guy who's going to eat a ton of innings. And I think he's going to be a very serviceable number 4.
Yeah, for sure. If he can replicate what he did at Kansas City last year, there's no doubt that he'll, again, we talk about this for other position groups, raise the floor of the starting pitching. And yeah, I really like him to do that. They have him, though, not necessarily hitting the same, numbers that he did last year. They have at Fangraphs him going 8-11 for his record, 156 innings, and a 4.84 ERA. And Baseball Savant does have him as like a top ground ball percentage pitcher, which I think is key to a ballpark like Great American, because it's notoriously called Great American Small Park. So if he can keep guys grounding out, obviously he needs the defense behind him to help him out in that area. And I know we talked about that before, about the defense hopefully improving from 2024 to this year. Because if he can get that help behind him with that ground ball, percentage that's pretty high for pitchers in his same category, I think he'll have some success in Great American. Hopefully, he also gets the run support as well, just like Greene. The thing that I'm kind of interested, you're talking about Lodolo possibly being traded. If it isn't going well, I can see the same thing for Martinez being on that $21 million qualifying offer. If it's not going well, they're obviously not going to match another qualifying offer after 2025. They're obviously going to have a situation where it's kind of like Montas, where he was making $15 million a year last year. And if there's a contender, hopefully not the Brewers or someone in our division, but hopefully can trade, Martinez to someone like, the Yankees, for example, who may need that another starter and don't mind taking on a majority of that $21 million, right? I can see that happening this year if things go south for the Reds. But if things go well, you're talking about like you're not sure what you're going to do. If things are going well and Martinez is pitching well, Hunter's pitching well, hopefully Lodolo and Singer as well, like I don't know if they'll be too upset on trying to get another qualifying offer, another re-up on his contract after 2025, meaning that they're in the playoffs, they're contending for the playoffs, hopefully. And I don't know, I can't be too mad. We obviously talk about this off recording a lot, but like it's about time that the Castellinis kind of catch up with a little bit of Major League Baseball and start opening up the purse strings a little bit. Obviously, I think the philosophy of the organization is really get arms, get starting pitching arms, and we'll talk about it later because I was just looking back, the 2024 draft, if you remember the hype around it, the Reds had the second pick, right? And the top two consensus picks were Travis Bazana, I think he's an Australian kid, and Charlie Condon of Georgia. And like, I think remember your tweets about it, like, hey, either way, we're getting Condon or we're getting Bazana, right? And either way, let's go, right? But yeah. What did the Reds do? What number 2 pick? They picked Rhett Lowder's, battery mate at Wake Forest, Burns. And it's not like Burns is not a good player because, as we'll talk about later, he's a highly rated prospect. So I think the overall philosophy is get these arms in, get guys that can eat innings. I think they kind of want to go cheap, possibly like the Hayes route with batters, because heck, I was just reading the other day that there's Kyle Tucker has left the Astros and now signed with the Cubs, but he's on the verge of a 11-year, $366 million contract. And he's, I think, already 30, if I remember right, or 29. I can't remember exactly, but he's, a little bit past his prime. But like, I don't see the Reds ever doing that. I can see them locking up like they did with Greene, a long-term deal that ends up aging well. But I think at least their organization philosophy is get arms in. If they turn into the Burns, the Lowders, the Chase Pettys, awesome, because we're going to need those arms because it's hard to do 162 games or 9 innings each time out, right? And be a successful ball club. You kind of have, if you're not going to be the Dodgers or the Yankees where you could just buy guys, at a premium. You gotta get those guys in cheap and hopefully lock them up for cheap. Not unlike Hunter Greene has kind of got that long-term deal that's aging really, really well. And then the question of like we're got these 4 guys, we're feeling real good about them, but who's going to be number 5? Who's going to be the 5th guy? And I don't know about you, it's it's hopefully the guy that we're going to talk about a lot. But you never know, right? Because sometimes things happen. They play till the 23rd, so they still got at least 10 more days of spring training games that things could change. Hopefully no injuries, but hopefully we'll ramp up and be ready for opening day by the 27th and know who our fifth starter is. But I ask you, Ricky, who for you will be the fifth starter for the Reds?
I'm leaning towards Andrew Abbott. I worry about him being ready. I think he just made his spring training debut with the AAA team, I believe. So we have I think it's 15 days until spring opening day. So maybe he gets ready. Plus, with him being the fifth starter, gives him an extra 5 days. I would like Abbott. Another potential guy maybe could be someone we're going to talk about more later, Graham Ashcraft, or maybe even, I hope it's not him, but it could be Rhett Lowder. I feel like if it's Rhett Lowder, things aren't going right. If we could keep him in the minor leagues for, I think it's another 6 weeks or so, we would gain another year of team control. So I would, hopefully we can get that. Abbott to me, he's pre-All-Star game last year. He was 9-6 with a 3.39 ERA. The home run ball got to him, but funny enough, his batting average against him was 221. So when guys were making contact, it was a home run. But the issue with Abbott is his long-term reliability. Post All-Star game last year, he had I think it was a 6 ERA. His career ERA post August is almost 7. So I hopefully with him, I think it was reported that he slimmed down over 20 pounds coming into spring training. So, quote unquote, best shape of his life that we're hearing about a lot in spring training.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's real and it will give him more of a long-term success, because him as your 5 with an ERA under 3.5 as a number 5 starter is just something you dream of for a rotation. Who do you lean toward with your number 5 guy?
Yeah, same. Probably Andrew Abbott. We've seen him. This is going to be his 3rd year in the majors. We kind of know a little bit about him more than the other guys we'll talk about, much later or later in this episode. And also once we do the farm system episode later, I think he's definitely seasoned. I don't want to say veteran, but he's seasoned enough to know hopefully his body for the majors. He came up as a rookie in 2023, came out the gate when first 9 starts or 7. It was something crazy where he won every decision ever he came out as a rookie. But the book on him is he fades, right? After that All-Star break, you cited those stats there, he fades. And that could be a conditioning thing. It could be they want to prevent further injury, or they're starting to figure him out once the season starts to kind of come along. It could be one of those. In an ideal world, the Reds have enough guys to start him in the minors, right? And have him kind of, go through whatever he needs to go through in the minors and bring him up June, July, August, and then have his best stuff then. That would be ideal, but I don't think that's the situation we find the Reds this year. He's going to have to be the 5th guy because he's another lefty that can provide, a decent, amount of innings from that side of the plate where he's not a flamethrower like Greene, but he's crafty enough to get guys out and get it deep into games. It's just a matter of, I think, with him as well, if I remember right, he has a lot of struggles with the third guy or third time through the lineup with guys. So you find that he gets a lot of those early pulls. I don't know, like Francona's methodology on that. I'm not sure if he's a complete, or if he adheres completely to that philosophy. If guys struggle third time through the lineup with teams, if he's a quick guy to pull them out. But I feel like that's what happened a lot with Abbott and his pitch count with Bell. I don't have the stats exactly, but even though that we felt that he kind of had a somewhat disappointing year last year, especially toward the tail end of the year, he's still a 3.3 WAR in 2024. So he's a guy that makes a difference. So I kind of want to pump up Abbott to be this fifth guy. If he's the fifth guy, once we've gone through Greene and Martinez and Lodolo and Singer, he's going to probably be matching up with a lot of fifth starters for other teams. And if we can have him be on his best, right, and maybe limit his innings in the middle of the season when, maybe he starts to show a little bit wear and tear, and have Lowder come up or whomever, usually the guys that come up in those situations like Lyon Richardson or Julian Aguiar. Unfortunately, Aguiar is injured, but you know what I mean? Like, I can see, Lyon Richardson coming up and being that fifth guy for a couple turns. And then, to get the rest for Abbott, hopefully can help him maintain hopefully his momentum and strength going toward the most important months of the season. But yeah, I think Abbott is kind of key. If he can find that 2023 magic, which again seems to be a theme with a lot of these guys, let's find that magical 2023 formula. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it's the water or the Viking helmet, which, we both are not, we kind of want to see that maybe come back, or, maybe the presence of Joey Votto being the guy coming back, and everyone's like, let's do it for the old man who's, anyway. But I think Abbott definitely could be that fifth guy. And, if he gives that 3.3 WAR again, I think that's a good season for him, especially because he's seen as a guy that kind of fades, and hopefully they can manage his innings, not necessarily pull him from games early and if he's dealing, but hopefully he can build upon the last 2 years of success and post All-Star game kind of really buckle down and give them some really good innings, really good performances, and hopefully keep them in contention when they need to. And Abbott's my guy. Is there any wild card fifth guys that you see on the 26-man roster come March 27th, or you know what I mean, or are we kind of getting into the hopefully not, but maybe territory?
Not really. If there was any wild card, I think it would be Lowder. I don't know. If Brandon Williamson was healthy, maybe. If he wasn't coming off Tommy John, I think he would be a good number 5. Or
I guess I got one. I think Graham Ashcraft, maybe. I'm not giving this like a guarantee or nothing. He could maybe be the fifth guy, mostly because there were some predictions this week about the 26th man. Mark Shelton, the beat writer for the Reds, the main beat writer, he left off Scott Barlow off the relievers, and I think he had instead. But like, if you take away Ashcraft from the bullpen and put him in that fifth starter, you have Barlow. I don't have to look now because now it's gonna bug me. But like he had basically, and I haven't seen anything. Barlow pitched today and he seemed fine, nothing injury or anything like that. I cannot not see him seeing the field or the 26 man. But yeah, it was kind of weird to me. But slight chance, maybe 1%. I'll give it like 1 or 2% chance that Graham Ashcraft is the fifth guy to start the year if they feel like Abbott's not ready, and maybe they can put someone up, maybe like Jabot into the bullpen. But we'll talk about the bullpen, soon. But that'd be my wild card. I don't know. Am I crazy, or is that? I don't know.
No, it's funny because Ashcraft could be a starter or he could be a potential closer for the team. So, I mean, he as they say, he's got that dog in him. So they call him the bulldog. So, I like Ashcraft a lot. I think if he could get past that, I think the proverbial third time through the order, I think he could be serviceable. He had a 5.2 ERA last year. He had a whip of 1.5, but he only pitched in 77 innings, but he had 57 strikeouts. So like it's hard to get a gauge on someone like Ashcraft because he's only 27. Like he's not it'd be in, I guess, like in the prime of his career if he can just put it together. But his spring training, he's 0-2 with a 5.9 ERA. So I don't know. He could, but I don't know who is there anybody else that could be a wild card? Because I can't think of anybody.
No, I think that's and I was kind of trying to lead us to the next thing of like he could be the fifth starter, but I think we can get more into I guess the potential fifth starters in the middle of the season, which could be like we have here, Mr. Rhett Lowder. So where do you see Rhett Lowder starting at the beginning of the year?
I think if it was me, I would have him starting in AAA, but I think he could easily be that number 5, but it just depends on what they want to do with his service time because he was great last year. I think he started out. He went 2-2. He had a 1.17 ERA, like in 30 innings. Like he was great. His first start, oddly enough, I attended his first start, not knowing it would be his first start. But he walked a couple guys, but once he found his footing, he held them in check. It was just the bullpen let him down later in the game, and then I think it was Yasser Zueletta came in and really blew the game towards the end. I think Reds killer Willie Adames hit a grand slam in the top of the ninth. So
of course,
yeah. Rhett could easily be that number 2, number 3 guy in the future. It's just 2024. He would be best as a number 5, just with who they have. But like if Ashcraft's going to start the year in AAA, Rhett is someone that I would want to have as that number 5. But me playing service time, I want him, getting comfortable, knowing the game, and AAA would be really ideal for him. Where would you have him starting?
Yeah, I tend to think that AAA is not only the good thing or like the thing that should happen, but I think it's what the Reds organization is going to end up deciding. The service time thing that you brought up, definitely, I think the Reds would prefer to have more team control over Lowder based on the small sample size that he provided at the end of 2024. And there could be a possibility, a small thought in the back of Krall or Brad Meter's mind that like, okay, we saw Connor Phillips not do exactly as dominant work as Lowder did in 2023, but he ended up, having some setbacks and issues in 2024. And I don't think they necessarily want to overuse Lowder too soon. So I think putting him in the minors, hopefully keeping his confidence high, keep working on his stuff, getting batters out at the AAA level. And once he's really needed and called upon, if, someone's struggling out the gate, whether it be Lodolo or Abbott possibly, struggling out the gate, they have the arms kind of in waiting out there in AAA, and not only Lowder, but a couple other guys that we'll touch on later. But definitely, I feel they're really high on Lowder, and so is Just Baseball's top 100. I think they had him as the 43rd best prospect in all of baseball, which is great because I think that's the organizational philosophy of the Reds. They want arms. They want guys that are going to be able to contribute right away. And I think same thing I think they're going to do with kind of Burns is that they're these guys that are pitched in college for a while. They are high pedigree, and they're going to get them into the or they're getting them into the big league ball club sooner than later. It's not going to be in the minors for 2-3 years. These guys are going to be used right away. And they did the same thing in Lowder, right? Like, he was drafted in 2023, number 7 overall pick. He spent some time in each level, but he was I didn't even have time in 2024 or 2023 when I was trying to go to a Dayton Dragons game. He was gone by the time that I got tickets in May. So I was like, I can't even see Lowder. So they ended up in Chattanooga and then Louisville and then the majors by 2024. So I think they really want proven arms, guys that can get the job done while they've done it in college or in the minors and shown they have the stuff. That's kind of the thing that I think the Reds are really honing in on, and hopefully that's will be the foundation of success. Is that they'll have guys they can throw out there every 5 days and not have any problems, right? They can have that confidence in their starters. And like you said, I think the Reds want to keep him longer too, right? Don't want to have him spend up his service time by being on the 26th man in March, right? They want him to come up in late May or late April and May and be able to be serviceable without having to, be in pre-arbitration or be in arbitration and have to possibly see him go, in 5 years from now as opposed to 6. But yeah, that's how Lowder hopefully is going to be the guy in September in the big games too. We saw he could do it in September of last year. Let's have him do that same thing again. So I'm really high on him, but I think the best thing is that he stays in the minors.
Yeah, and in 2024, he only made one start in AAA. He threw 6 innings. He spent the most time in AA, where he kind of struggled, quote unquote, for a little bit. And a lot of it was Chattanooga, which is a terrible team, and he might give up 5, but they're not going to score any runs, or he might give up 6 and they might score 4. But I think giving him some time in AAA, let him see some top prospects, without really affecting his confidence if he does struggle for a little bit. So yeah, I think him starting in AAA would be ideal because he only made one start, but he was great. He 3 hits, no runs on 83 pitches. So when he did get to AAA, he was great. But I think they brought him up because they needed to. And I think if he hadn't have pitched so well, I think they might have sent him back down because he was a taxi squad guy when they brought him up. And it just so happened they needed a starter. And so they brought him up and he pitched well. So yeah, I would hope that he would start in AAA. Now, like we talked about earlier, dark horse number 5 starter Graham Ashcraft. Where do you see him fitting in this year?
Ideally, not the 5th guy, because that might mean that Abbott's not ready, or that would mean they brought up Lowder, and there's some, there's some sort of issue where they don't trust Ashcraft enough to be the 5th guy for a little bit until that service time limit kind of ends in mid-April. I see him as the Martinez role in 2025, at least at the beginning, being that long reliever where if the starter gets in trouble in the 2nd or 3rd inning, they can bring in Ashcraft, who has been a starter, who was a starter for the most part last year, got injured, and then had his bobblehead day, came back up, and then disappeared subsequently after that. So, he didn't have the best year. It definitely, he's what do you call him? His nickname's the Bulldog. I think he is also affectionately known as Doug, because I think he goes by his middle name Graham. I think it's Douglas Graham Ashcraft. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that you like having in a team because he comes with that attitude. He comes with that ability to go 5 innings and sweat all 5 innings, even though he might be having his best stuff. He seems like he's still like struggling, like it's costing him all of his energy to throw every single pitch. So you like that kind of guy to succeed. You like that kind of guy to be on your team and be successful. So I like him as just being a guy that hopefully can bridge the starters to the bullpen if need be, or maybe an inning or two when you need them, when other guys like Sam Mole or Suter or whoever else is maybe or Santillan is needing some rest that day. He can be that guy that eats up some innings in the middle of the game. But how do you see Graham Ashcraft fitting in 2025?
I think he'll be at worst case scenario. Well, I don't want to say worst case scenario. In a good situation would be him being, like you said, that Nick Martinez. If Hunter Greene struggles and goes 4 innings, you can bring him in to be that 4th through 6 innings and get him 2 to 3 innings out of the bullpen. I would like to see him in that high leverage bullpen situation where you get max effort out of him for an inning, and he has that makeup, and I've seen some people throw it around that he has the same pitch mix as Emmanuel Clase of Cleveland, their closer. No, he's not. I don't think he's that good, but he has that high velocity cutter with a pretty good slider. And if he can get those pitches going in a high leverage situation, I think he could be a dominant reliever that, he has a high ERA as a starter. I think if you could get him that 1 inning, I think he could be at minimum a serviceable reliever. And I think he has the potential to be a good reliever. Like, if not, maybe pushing it all-star quality. It'd be a stretch, but I think he's just got that pitch mix. I think if he could throw it together, I think he could easily be a sub-3 ERA reliever.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, especially in a bullpen that's heavily used last year, heavily used 2 years ago. To have a guy in there that's, I don't know if he's fresh. I can't remember the reports on him, but he's been looking decent in spring training as well. The max effort thing, I'd like to see it too. Like I like to see how he is in the first couple months of the season, how they're using him, seeing what, like you said, what type of set, if it's high leverage situation, low leverage situation. You know what I mean? I almost feel like they're going to kind of use him like a Buck Farmer, where it's a low leverage situation and just eat innings when they're either way out of it or like way ahead. Maybe I think that may be a possibility. I'm not sure because they're not exactly sure how he's going to deal with those high leverage situations. And if he could be like a Class A, and I think we've talked about it, off when we weren't recording, that he could be maybe a closer down the road. I know they kind of had those rumblings when Hunter Greene was struggling, like, oh, well, Hunter Greene could just be a closer. But I don't know about the ego of these guys. If they're like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how Doug, I don't know how he sees himself, if he thinks I got starter stuff. I want to be a starter. I don't know if that factors into it or not. I think that's definitely a question for Francona, if he's going to be able to manage him. I mean, it's, that's kind of part of the job, you know what I mean? But, I'd like to see him be successful in whatever role he ends up being in, because he didn't have he had an up and down season last year. I think they have him, not going for a lot of innings this year, with the fact that it's kind of known he's starting in the bullpen. But if he can be a solid contributor in whatever capacity, he might be a great candidate for an opener, which, we've talked about that. Not necessarily my most favorite part of baseball, but, he might be one of those guys that opens a game, gets those first 3 outs, and then kind of, goes from there. If he can go another inning or not, we'll see. But I hope he can bounce back. It's definitely a big theme. 2024 is not necessarily the best year in Reds baseball, but hopefully we can build on the successes and bounce back from the guys that struggled for 2024. He can be a candidate for that as well, just kind of having a bounce back year. But yeah, it could go a lot of ways. I think, like you said, if he's got the stuff to be really good, it's just a matter of putting it together in whatever role and him hopefully accepting that role, leaning into it. Hopefully that can be something that he does in 2025 and contributes in a big way.
Yeah, I don't remember. Was it 2023 or 2024 where his grandmother passed away? I feel like it was 2023.
Yeah, it could be.
I'm looking at his splits, and I feel like, if I remember right, I think it was in May when that happened. In April of 23, he had a 2.1 ERA, and then in May he ballooned up to a 9.2, and then in June it ballooned up again to a 10.28. But then in July he settled in and he went 3-1 with a 3-1 with a 1.84 ERA. And then August he went 1-1 with a 3.03, and then September he had a 5.4, and I think it was one start. So his splits are all over the place. I really feel like that really messed with his confidence, because I think she had a very, important role in his life. And I hate that maybe that was something that really affected him, because last year he never had a month with an ERA below 3.4. So, and then June he had a 10.0 ERA. So I hate that would be something that happened and it really affected him, but he really almost hasn't been the same guy since. So I would like to see him hopefully get his confidence back also. I think that plays a big role. I would like to see him max effort for sure. Max effort, 1 to 2 innings.
Yeah, he definitely seems like a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. I remember him having some big strikeouts, and he let it all out, last year and the year before. So he's not a guy that shies away from that kind of stuff. I think he's a baseball guy where, he knows when he's dealing, when he's got the job done. So there could be something to that where the passing of his grandma might have affected him. And, a lot of times at this level, a lot of these guys have the talent to get to the majors, right? But a lot of times they say like 80% of professional sports is between the ears. So like if hopefully he's not necessarily still struggling with that. Hopefully he's made some peace with that at this point, and he can really, really focus in on his role with this ball club, because I think he'll be, pivotal. Like I said, it could be the kind of the Buck Farmer guy, and Buck Farmer left in the offseason. Ian Jabot was, wasn't there in 2024, and you know what I mean? So it seems like he could be that guy that fills the gap in many, many instances and many different games in high or low leverage situations. So all the best to Ashcraft. I really hope he can be a key contributor, because, nowadays, like we talked about, the starters don't go as long anymore. So like bullpen guys are really key, right? Like the salaries don't necessarily reflect that yet, but like bullpen guys seem to be like really, really at a premium if you can get some good ones that can be good year on year. But I think the sexiness is being the starter, which I think this organization really values, and because of that, we've got some guys in the pipeline and the minors that are top-notch stuff. like I said, just baseball. It has Mr. Burns at number, I think, 35 or 36 in the top 100 prospects. It's got Lowder at 43, and I believe Chase Petty's at like 61. Another guy we haven't talked about a lot lately, but we can talk about more. But how do you see Petty or Burns? Are they going to be in the big leagues in 2025 or not?
I think if things are going well, I would hope that we don't. Or if we do, it's tail end of the year, September call up, get their feet wet, and really prepare them for 2026. I think there's a pretty good chance we could see both of them in 2025. Just, Burns, he just has that dog in him. He throws 102. He's got, breaking balls. He gets fired up when he strikes somebody out. I don't know if you've seen some of his clips from Wake Forest, like he gets fired up, and he's a competitor. I saw an interview with him the other day where he was talking about, getting called up this year, and he thinks that he could be called up before Lowder does. So that would be a surprise to me, but he's a competitor. He likes to rub things in people's faces. He rubbed it in that, he beat Rhett Lowder's strikeout record at Wake Forest just a year after Lowder said it. So I think, maybe even if things are going well, maybe Abbott's struggling or Martinez isn't doing well as a starter, but they need to move him to the bullpen. I think you could bring up a guy like Burns that, he could go 4 or 5 innings as a starter and then have Martinez come in to bridge that gap to the back of the bullpen. Petty has phenomenal stuff. I saw, I think it's Austin Wynns, the Reds' third string catcher. He works out with Sonny Gray in the off seasons, and he says with Chase Petty, he sees a lot of Sonny Gray and Chase Petty. So, we could see the Chase bros come up, and then at Cincinnati theme, we could have the 3 Chase amigos and have Jamar Chase and Chase Petty and Chase Burns take over the city.
Yeah, no, for sure. And another guy, I guess I forgot to mention, I think that was in that Mark Shelton prediction, and they had Carson Spires in the bullpen, and a guy who could be a dark horse 5th starter maybe, because he
I forgot all about Spires.
Yeah, he pitched some good games last year, and it's worth a mention to have him because I think he might start in AAA, especially if we have a situation where Ashcraft is in the bullpen. And so is Barlow, so is Rogers. Like the bullpen's, I think, in a pretty good spot, and we'll talk about that more later. But I think that guy is another one that bears some talking about because he's been in the major. He's shown his stuff. So there's a possibility that Lowder, Burns, and Petty are going to be all at AAA, and Spires might be the first guy to be called up to fill that 5th starter gap if need be, or if they need a long reliever and Ashcraft moves up into the rotation. Like that's a very distinct possibility as well, because he's already got the major league experience, and we've seen him do it at the major league level. The one thing that I definitely wanted to mention as well in terms of like the guys that are prospects is that I love seeing that Connor Phillips is now assigned to AAA. It shows that they have confidence in him after he had his setbacks and went to the Arizona complex league and kind of rebuilt his whole mechanics. So I'd love to see if Phillips does well in AAA. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to be blowing guys away and be the first guy to get called up, but I'd like to see him have some success. So we'll probably be talking about him hopefully later in the season, giving some updates to everybody, and hopefully they're positive updates, because I love that he's at least the organization has confidence enough of him to start there. I know we talked about Marte and some takes of guys that putting him in Dayton, but like, you know, I mean, you could do the same thing possibly with Phillips, right? You can say, go get your confidence, strike out a bunch of high A guys, right? But really, like, if he wants to get his confidence really good and see some, you know, as they call, you know, what do they call it? AAA plus type players, like to see some guys
4A.
like 4A guys. Yeah, 4A guys. If he wants to really get his confidence up, he's got to get those 4A guys out so he can be ready, hopefully, again, for that next step to the majors. And then another guy just worth mentioning, I feel, for this kind of prospect level, Luis May, also in AAA assigned. And I love his stuff, just seeing his highlights, hitting 100 for Dayton. So I think he's I don't know if he was in Chattanooga, but I feel like if anything, he skipped from Dayton straight to AAA because they must like his stuff that much. But well, I guess I'm trying to say is the cupboard's full. We got guys, and the organization really seems to like these guys a lot, and they also seem to like Wake Forest guys a lot. So maybe we should be watching a lot more Wake Forest baseball this spring, just to make sure that, you know, the 2025 draft, we're not caught off guard again when they have, you know, a top 5 pick and they seemingly go, oh, this guy's going to the outfielder, and then they go with another Wake Forest starter. But that's anyway. That's but the point being is that I think we got guys, we got arms, we got hopefully guys that will be ready to contribute once they're called up to the big leagues, and hopefully in big spots in meaningful games. And yeah, I love Burns and Petty stuff that I've seen in the spring training games so far. And I think they'll definitely take kind of a Lowder approach to Burns, just to throw that in there. Like you said, a late September call up, or late August, early September call up. That I think is most ideal. I know he's got that fire in him and that potential to be a top line guy, but you know, he's 22. He's got a lot of baseball ahead of him. You know, let's not burn him out or do something silly to mess up his confidence. So I think the Reds, if they're thinking at least organizationally smart, it's not necessarily about 2025, unless, you know, always we're talking about health, unless things are going wrong and they do need him now. But I think the ideal situation is Petty, Lowder, and Burns are all AAA guys working on their craft and getting ready for the majors.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, best case scenario is we see them late August, September. I think 2026, and I hate looking towards the future, but you know, that rotation in 2026 could be spectacular. I mean, if you could have Greene, Lodolo, Lowder, Burns, Petty as your 5. And that's not even counting Andrew Abbott or Brandon Williamson or Julian Aguiar or any of those guys.
Don't forget Lyon Richardson.
Lyon Richardson for sure. And one thing about him is, like, I see a little bit of like Matt Latos in him. Just he's big build, he's tall, he's got a really strong fastball. He could be a really good reliever. And I think we'll talk more about that next episode when we talk about the bullpen. But yeah, I mean, Lyon Richardson, he's a sneaky guy, you know. His numbers don't wow you so far, but he's got decent potential. He's got a really strong fastball.
Yeah, he's a big time company man, which, you know, the Reds love those kind of guys that will, you know, they'll do whatever they need to be done and then sent back down the minors, and we'll see you in another 6-7 months type of thing. But this is, I think, our longest episode, because I think that's a good thing in terms of, like, we're talking about Reds pitchers in a positive light, right? Like, I don't want to get all nostalgic, but this is kind of like 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And these guys are dealing Arroyo and Cueto and Mike Leake and Simone. I don't want to jinx it, because I know we're kind of a snake-bitten franchise in terms of trying to get to the playoffs or rebuilding every damn year type of situation. But I don't know, man. Like if we got the arms, like, you know, it's kind of like the adage in other sports: defense wins championships. And you know, baseball is fun fact, the only major sport where the defense holds the ball the whole game. So think of it that way. If you got dominant pitching, you're holding the ball the whole game. You're in control. So I like to think that the Reds are super intelligent organizational masters that are like, you know what, we're going to get the best rotation. May not be for 2025. You know, my favorite year, 2026, is obviously that rotation that you mentioned. There could be world beaters. They could be guys that like they win 90 games easily, no problem, right? But
yeah, they remind me a lot of 2012. Like you see a little bit. You know, I'm not, you know, hindsight of Homer Bailey's career. Yeah, I see. You know, I think Chase Petty projects better than Homer Bailey did. But you see that comp a little bit where he's got that lively fastball, good breaking ball, and you know Chase Burns could be that, you know, maybe Matt Latos type guy. And then I think, is this the best pitching crop that we've had? I don't know, this century.
It's got to be out on the field. We got to see it on the field, right? Like that's the thing. It's great if we can see it in our minds and we see how great these guys are in our minds. But yeah, you got to win games. You gotta put up those stats. You got to win those awards. I don't think any of those 2012 guys had, you know, Cy Young potential, but as a staff, it was really solid. You know, obviously a playoff solid rotation. So I don't know. It's a good question. I guess we'll have to answer that this time next year. So, all right. Thanks for tuning in again. You can catch Ricky at WeLikeSportsPC.com. He just had a piece on Sal Stewart, which I think got snubbed at the top 100 prospects. We'll have to write to Just Baseball to tell them that they're wrong, basically. You know, he could be maybe number 101. We just don't know. But anyway, great piece on Sal Stewart out there. And, you know, catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Ohio Sports Talk. Doug and Jordan go live every Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Check them out. And, yeah, go Reds. Let's win 100 games.
Let's do it.
Thank you for watching the Red Hot Reds podcast, presented to you by Ohio Sports Talk.